United States Senator Bob Menendez, who just got out of a trial that ended in a mistrial, federal corruption charges then dropped by the federal government. Some people thought Bob Menendez would be headed to prison. Instead, he is running for re-election, and he's got all the big shots surrounding him at his event. Randy and Bob. Bob, I'm going to start with you. You're a Democrat. Bob Menendez, is he damaged goods? And do you think this rich guy coming in that's going to spend potentially tens of millions can beat him?
No, I don't think he's damaged goods. I think he's a guy, once again, who has established resilience in the face of the DOJ. Don't forget, they violated their own guidelines when they dropped subpoenas on him years ago in order to sully him during another election cycle. I never understood the trial against him in the first place. And I'm saying that as a prosecutor, not as a Democrat or a Republican. I predicted from the beginning, as came out to be true, it was going to be a not guilty or a hung jury, and those jurors listened to that evidence and they came back and they were disgusted by the fact that he was prosecuted. So I think that people in Jersey are fair, and I think that they're going to say if he was not convicted, then he should not be held accountable. With his money, with his background, and I respectfully disagree with your guest there, he has done a tremendous amount. He's a very powerful senator, and I think his career goes forward undaunted, as it should.
Randy, the issues, they're going to be taxes. It's going to be a referendum potentially on President Trump, who doesn't score so well polling in this state. But do you think that a Bob Hugan, a guy who served his country honorably in the military, who has got sons who are serving honorably in the Marine Corps, does he have a shot? And is this the kind of refreshing, non-political candidate that might get people excited?
I think he's got an uphill battle in New Jersey. We're a blue state. We consider ourselves very progressive. He's also got some questionable stuff with his former drug company in the past. He's not necessarily clean of all that himself. And it's the anti-Trump backlash.
But again,
we're
even
very
that,
emotional
nobody's
right
accusing anybody of wrongdoing. It's just a nice talking point. Hey, did he make a lot of money off the backs of people? And you could put that argument, I think, on anybody. But we shall see. All right, Randy, Bob, thank you, guys. Good to have you on the show. A judge in New Jersey facing 4 counts of judicial misconduct, suspended from his $165,000 a year job. One of the charges accuses him of telling a rape victim and asking her whether or not she understood that she could ward off unwanted advances by closing her legs.
Both Judge Russo and I respect both the process as well as the Advisory Committee on Judicial Conduct's role in this matter. And under those circumstances, we believe it would be inappropriate to have any further comment with respect to any aspects of the allegations in the media.
All right, let's bring in the A-plus panel to break this down. I'm joined by Randy Thompson. He is a social justice advocate for prison reform, CEO of Help Not Handcuffs. Good to see you again, Randy. Thanks for being with us.
Thanks for having me, Bill.
And former prosecutor and now defense attorney Bob Bianchi. Bob, I'm going to start with you. This judge, these accusations are really unbelievable.
Yeah, listen, in 30 years of doing this, I've heard 1 or 2 such comments early on in my career, but you would think after all the education and understanding rape and understanding domestic violence, that somebody that makes this kind of comment not only denigrates the judiciary, it denigrates other women, usually, typically women, but there are men, to go seek relief in a domestic violence court that they're going to be attacked and victimized potentially a second time by the judge.
Does this jeopardize any prior case that he may have ruled and convicted, somebody that went to the judge instead of a jury? Does this jeopardize people that maybe have been put away? And they can say, wait a minute, he was biased.
I don't think that it does. They would look at all the record. I mean, the bias of the judge would be clear on the record with regard to rulings, so on and so forth, and certainly it could be appealed. It doesn't make the judge look good, but I don't think it's going to really reverse. The question is, do we stop this activity from going forward? Because a lack of judicial temperament is a big problem we have been witnessing in this state. We need quality jobs, Bill, and let's thank Governor Murphy for appointing Justice Zizali, reinstating the JPAC, so that we can start reviewing the qualifications of these judges as well as the temperament and background that they have before they get on the bench.
To me, it sounds like Governor Murphy's just he's throwing it out there, but do you really know these guys? I mean, another questionnaire. What do you really know about these guys once they're on the bench for a number of years?
Well, sure. I mean, judges are kind of reputed for being a little temperamental. Judges can throw a tantrum here or there, but that's why it's so important to hold judges accountable. And this is not an isolated incident. This is going to our neighbor to the north, but a judge in Canada said the same thing to a rape victim. Why didn't you keep your knees closed? He resigned. They forced him out right away.
This apparently isn't the first instance of judicial impropriety based on the articles that we're reading. So it gets to a certain point where you can only have so much radiation, Bill, in you until you get cancer.
The trial of the nanny who killed 2 toddlers, stabbed them to death 6 years ago. Trial continues. The nanny is claiming a defense of insanity. Essentially, the devil made me do it. I want to bring in clinical psychologist Dr. Jeffrey Gardier. Jeff, thanks for being back on the show. Always good to see you.
Of course.
So, Doc, let me ask you, this devil made me do it. Is this a true plea for insanity? Do you think there's a chance that this nanny could get off?
Pleading the insanity defense has been very difficult for people to be successful with. Over the past perhaps 10, 15 years, there have been perhaps 8 cases where people have been found not guilty by reason of insanity. So it's going to be a really, really, really tough road for her to get that.
Doc, even if that were to happen, you're talking about somebody who brutally, savagely stabbed 2 little children, a 2-year-old and a 6-year-old. I mean, it's a horrific crime to wrap your head around.
Sure.
Tell me either way, she's not going to be back out on the street.
Yeah, my heart goes out to the parents. Whatever way this turns out with the trial, my heart goes out to those parents and, of course, the poor children. What we find is even if someone is found not guilty by reason of insanity, they end up doing a multitude of years in a forensic psychiatric prison. So they end up sometimes doing more time than if they had pleaded guilty to homicide or second-degree murder.
Interesting. Let me just ask you this. A lot of people say you'd have to be completely and utterly insane to even do this. I'm someone who believes in good and evil, and some people just act in an evil way and commit horrific crimes. What do you say?
I would think that anyone who commits a crime like this has a serious mental defect, serious psychiatric issue. But here's the key. Even if you have a psychiatric issue, in New York State, you must prove that with that psychiatric issue, you did not know right from wrong. And there are people who are schizophrenic who happen to know the difference between right and wrong.
All right, doctor, always good to talk to you. Thank you.
Pleasure.
Let's bring in the A-plus panel. Again, Randy and Bob. All right, Bob, let's start with you as a prosecutor. You can actually see both sides of this. From a prosecutor standpoint, more difficult because she's claiming she was nuts?
No, it is an extremely difficult standard. As was indicated, you have to show, first of all, a bona fide mental disease or defect that the person was suffering at the time, and that it debilitated them to the point that they didn't know the difference between right or wrong. It is extremely difficult to prove because what prosecutors will do is look at conduct just before and after to see if there's goal-directed behavior, and her slitting her wrists and trying to kill herself.
Stabbing herself in the neck?
Shows that she knew the difference between right and wrong, and that's the end of the defense.
Randy, what do you think? I mean, is this an issue really that goes back that we are not doing a good enough job recognizing people that are unstable and potentially off well before they get to an act like this?
We got to think about why we actually even punish people. Is it retribution, rehabilitation, incapacitation? And what are we trying to get out of this? Do we
Let me
just
ask
want
you
to
that, though, Randy, because you're a bit of an expert on this. Help, not handcuffs. I get that. I interpret some of that as a little soft on crime, but I do understand your perspective. With this case, should she ever see the light of day?
Where does the problem originate? Like you said, was there a problem beforehand that could have been addressed? And we have a horrible history of throwing our mentally ill, into the street, not housing them, not giving them the services they want. I'm not making the case that she should not be incapacitated for a significant period of time.
All right, thanks, guys. Appreciate it. New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio, no stranger to controversy. Now he's taken a lot of heat for a promise he made a couple years ago to put 15,000, or I should say open up and build 15,000 apartments that could house the homeless. So far, only a couple hundred are open. As a result, the city may have to pony up $1 billion to put the homeless in hotel rooms. John Shumo has the details. John, $1 billion, it's real money.
The numbers are staggering, Bill. The city spends 32 million tax dollars every month to currently house people who are homeless in hotels. It plans to spend another $1 billion over the next 3 years booking commercial hotels. The average spent on a room will be $174 per night. That is money at high-end hotels in Manhattan and motels in the outskirts of the Rockaways. Why is this happening? A frustrated taxpayer might ask. There are many reasons. New York has a right to shelter law. If you go to an intake center in New York and say you need a place to stay, the city of New York is legally bound to find you one. The traditional shelter system is at capacity. These are buildings dedicated as shelters and apartments used for longer stays. And if you think taxpayers are frustrated, speak to someone who is homeless. The face of homelessness has changed. There are families who can simply no longer afford the rent in their gentrifying neighborhood. These are working professionals who've gotten priced out. They haven't gotten a raise in years.
The primary cause of record homelessness in New York City is the citywide lack of affordable housing. Simply put, rents are exceeding much faster than incomes are in every neighborhood of the city. And that means that even people who are working minimum wage jobs cannot comfortably afford a permanent apartment. So although the de Blasio administration has taken key steps toward preventing more people from becoming homeless, what we have not seen them do enough of is moving people out of shelters and into permanent housing.
Bill, 2.5 years after Mayor de Blasio outlined his reform package, he said 90 new shelters would open soon. Only 11 have. Here's the most staggering number of all. On Sunday night, 60,000 people slept in the New York City shelter system. 22,000 of them were children. Many of them head up, wake up, and go off to school each and every day and return to a homeless shelter. It is a sad state of affairs when it comes to combating the homeless crisis in New York City. Bill?
All right, thank you, John. Okay, let's bring in the A+ panel to break this down. I'm joined by Randy Thompson. He is a social justice advocate for prison reform, CEO of Help Not Handcuffs. Good to see you again, Randy. Thanks for being with us.
Thanks for having me, Bill.
And Bob Bianchi, former county prosecutor turned defense attorney. Bob, always good to see you. Randy, I'm going to start with you. You seem to be more on the line of a social justice guy. Wouldn't it be cheaper, though, to have a city employee go on Priceline for the next few years and bid on hotel rooms, $172? I got to believe you can negotiate better if you're filling up some of these local hotels.
Well, I mean, the big issue is that you're always spending big bucks on housing insecurity, that you don't know if the person's going to have stable housing going forward. So sure, figuring out whether or not they can find an Airbnb or something that's cheaper, but doing that times 60,000 people is a monstrous bureaucracy in itself. So
Bob, this
not
is
easily solved.
disgusting and disgraceful. I mean, you've got a guy that campaigned on social justice. He's to the left of almost every politician out there, and these are their main talking points. Is it not embarrassing for him to go out and campaign on this and then utterly fail?
Well, you know I'm not a big fan of a lot of the leftist things that we've discussed previously, but on this one, I want to know more data. I think his heart is in the right place. I agree it's a sprawling bureaucracy. It's very difficult, but at least he's moving forward. And the plan was a multi-year plan, so we have to see how that works out. Listen, the shame of this is that for many years, nobody was looking into, when I was prosecutor, addiction, as was indicated before, mental health issues, homelessness. We were always doing more with less.
So
Nobody cared.
Bob, why aren't we addressing the problem of addiction? Why aren't we addressing the problem of joblessness? Why aren't we addressing the prosperity issue? My goodness, we miss Rudy Giuliani.
Well, very simply, many times when we tried to do stuff like this, we were told there's not money in the budget for it. Sorry, go somewhere else.
All right, thanks, guys.